what's up everybody, this is Isaac.
And Jacob with Cultivate Colorado. And today we're gonna show you how to put together a basic drip system. Today we're gonna go over every step, including all the parts you need, as well as how to put them all together to make sure that you have success on your drip system the first go around.
Absolutely. So we're gonna go through these products and kind of tell you what they do. We have a few different optional ones here. You're gonna need a different product based upon how many sites you're gonna be doing. We'll get into all that later. Alrighty, so again, we have some parts here that are absolutely needed and we have some parts that are optional or not necessary. We're gonna go through what they are. This is a bunch of different items that you will or may not need, and we'll show you what you do and don't need later. The first item right here, this is a liter pump. These are amazing pumps, they work really well. The size that you will need will depend on how many plants you have in your setup, and we'll get to that later. The next item we have here is a different pump. This is a Mondi pump. This is a much cheaper option, but it will work for a really small, simple setup like a 4x4 tray or something like that. This item I would say is essential. This is a Netafim RCal filter. What this does is it's essentially going to remove any salt buildup from your system, which is crucial to it running effectively. And we'll go through installing this and how to maintain it as well later in this video. This right here is an air vac. So this is gonna do several things. It's gonna make sure that one, no air is getting pushed into your lines, and two, it's gonna act as an anti-siphon device. This will essentially make it so that your reservoir doesn't all push all the nutrients into your plants. We're gonna go over two different ways of setting this up. One being Netafim, and they have different drippers and different emitters. We'll talk about what those are and which ones are good for what. The other system that we have over here, we have the Floraflex system. So we're gonna talk about the pros and cons versus Netafim and a Floraflex setup, and we will get to that as well. Over here is three different options for controlling the watering. These are essentially gonna hook up to your pump, and they are gonna be what's turning your water on and off without you there. We'll get to the difference between these and what is and isn't needed depending on your setup. We also have some optional Netafim pieces that will hook up directly to your line, which will allow you to get everything operational. And then over here, we have the stuff that we're not necessarily selling, but stuff that you could pick up at any local hardware store. And we'll include a list below of what these items are. They're pretty basic stuff. You have a pair of PVC cutters here. We have a pair of clamps here, a really simple wrench, plumber's tape. Again, we'll include what PVC pieces these are in the link below. And you're gonna need a 2-part of a PVC primer and glue. The last couple items I didn't mention, we have a blue barrel. This will be our reservoir. Again, you know, if you're not able to have this exact item, you could run it with something else. We'll talk about what else you could do with that. And down here we have our Netafim tubing. This tubing is specific to Netafim. It's a great product, I'd really recommend it. We'll talk about that one later. The last thing that I have over here is I have just a 4x4 setup. We get a lot of phone calls about how to build these automatic setups. So we really thought it'd be a good idea just to make a video and to like show people really how to do it in person. This is, you know, a really simple, easy area. If you're doing a larger area, we'll talk about that as well. And if you're doing a commercial size area, you should definitely contact us about that. We would love to help you with it. The last thing we'll be talking about is different mediums, and we'll get to that later when we toss them in the pots. So the two pumps we're looking at today, we have the liter 300 and we have the Mondi 1585. Both of these pumps will work really well for a small tent setup or just, you know, 4 to 8 plants, something like that. Today we're gonna use the liter. I prefer the liter. I think it's a much nicer pump. So let's get rolling here. Here's your liter 300 pump. And you can see it has a threaded top up here. Included in this should be the piece that has conversions on it. The conversion we're gonna be using today is a 1-inch thread right here. And I've already put plumber's tape around it, which is why it looks like that. You could add plumber's tape here if you need. I've never had any issue with this specific thread leaking from this piece, But if you experience anything like that, just toss some plumber's tape on there. So first things first, let's put that on there. The next piece we're gonna be using is a 1-inch PVC, whoops. What we're gonna be using is a PVC component here. This is a 1-inch slip, so it's just straight smooth on the inside. And this is a 1-inch female thread. This is gonna be able to just screw directly onto the pump, but the first thing we need to do is bond it to the PVC itself. So I'm gonna show you how to do that right now. You're gonna go ahead and take your piece of PVC, and you're gonna take the piece you're attaching it to. It's pretty simple. And then you move on. Set that down to open this. To this here, which is actually gonna glue it. The stuff can be kind of messy. Make sure you're working in an area that is well ventilated, and you can spill this potentially, because that will happen. So now that I put that on, I can just go ahead, squeeze this piece on there, get it as tight as possible. You wanna make sure it's bonded really well. And that is what you'll be doing with every single PVC piece that we put together today. For the rest of the video, I'm just gonna go ahead and attach the pieces without bonding them, just to keep it a little more simple for me and to save time explaining this. But again, that is the process you will follow for every single PVC piece that we list. What we're gonna do next is we're just gonna continue building out these pieces. Again, we've already put the hard PVC bond onto this piece, and that's gonna screw right onto our pump. So you can just go ahead, screw that right on there. And now we have hard PVC out of our pump. I really recommend adding this part right here. So this allows you to just disconnect and reconnect certain parts of your system. It's also extremely helpful if you want to clean your system out with anything. We're gonna go ahead and attach this. All of this will be sitting within this reservoir right here. This would have our nutrients in it, and that'll be delivering it out toward the tray. I'm gonna move this over just so I can show you how it's built out on the inside. But again, this would be sitting inside of that reservoir. So the next piece that I'd recommend putting on, this union piece right here. And again, you would be using the hard PVC 2-part primer and cement to put these pieces on. So this piece would be bonded on next. After that, we're gonna put another piece on. Now you could see at this height, it would be heading out of your reservoir. I had already pre-cut these pieces just to expedite the video, but again, I'll cut some pieces later for you just to see how that process is done. The next piece we're gonna add on is an elbow. And now we're going to set up our Netafim Arcal filter. The Arcal filter is going to be removing any salts that build up in your system. It's crucial to maintaining a system that works well and doesn't clog. It will save you a lot of money as far as replacing these parts. So I've got a little small piece here. I'm gonna go ahead and connect that one next. Then we're gonna put in our Arcal filter. This has a 1-inch male thread on both sides. You'll also see that it has an arrow facing toward where you want the water to flow to. So let's grab these 2 pieces here and attach them. These are smooth on one side, and they are female 1-inch thread on the other side. When attaching these, don't use the PVC bonding glue that you have. Just use some plumber's tape or something like that. I have never seen these leak. I'm sure that it is possible if you really don't screw them on tight enough. We'll just do it really simple for now just to explain. And again, it's smooth on both sides out now, and the thread sides are matching up with the thread. So this is gonna be our next piece, and it's gonna go on here. After this piece, we're going to attach the air vacuum. The particular one that I'm using today is from Floraflex. It has a 3/4 thread here, and it has a little ball in there. When this system pressurizes and it shoots water up, this little ball will be shot upward, and that'll essentially make sure that no water is going to escape through here. You will see a little water shoot out. That's just removing any air that could be in the line. Naturally in this system, it's going to reach a bottom point when your reservoir runs dry, and it will pick up some air. That's totally possible. This will spit it out and make sure that doesn't happen. The other thing that this piece does is it removes any siphoning issues. So imagine that this reservoir here is completely full. When it's full up to here and it travels out through the system into the tray, what can happen is because of that amount of pressure, it'll essentially force that water down further and into your tray. This right here will remove that issue from occurring simply by allowing some air to enter through the line. So we're gonna install that Floraflex piece. It goes after the RCal filter. The reason that I do that is just to ensure that the water going through it is a little less salty. And by salty, I mean the nutrients that you're adding. There's a little bit less buildup going on in here. To put this piece on, the next piece that we have here, this is a 1-inch smooth here, 1-inch smooth there, and then that top is a 3/4 female thread. So that will be the next piece in line. Let's make sure again that our arrow is facing toward where the water is going. And this piece will screw right into here. When you screw this piece in, I really do recommend using plumber's tape. I have seen this piece have some issues with leaking in the past. I don't know if it's this piece necessarily or the PVC. Alrighty, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna bring this tubing down, the PVC down into the tray. We're gonna need an elbow. This is a 1-inch smooth. And we have another little piece of PVC. You would apply the PVC primer and cement to both sides here. Fit those together. And then this whole component here, let me tighten up this RCal filter a little bit. This whole component here will fit onto right there. And now we have something that will remove any buildup, and we have this component which will remove any problems we might have. All right, so now we need to bring this down and into this tray area over here, and we will get that going. So, this area I haven't pre-cut yet. The reason being I wanted to show you guys how to cut this PVC in case you've never done it before. You will need a pair of really straightforward PVC cutters. These should be available at any hardware store near you. The next piece that we're installing is another union. This is to make sure that we can break our system down and clean it. Sort of to show you how it works. This part will be in the PVC, this part will be in the PVC, but you can unscrew it, which allows you to disconnect your PVC into multiple pieces. So I'm gonna put it about right here. The reason being, it seems like it'll make it more manageable later if I do ever need to take this apart. I could add it down here as well and have a separate line there, but then I'd have an extra long piece up here to deal with. So I'm gonna go ahead and make the cut right here. When using the PVC cutters, you wanna get as flat and flush as possible. You don't really wanna cut at an angle. That can cause some problems. So just get as straight cut as you can. These ones have seen some action, so give me a minute here. Doesn't really matter which way you put this. It's nice having them all the same way so you remember righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. But if you install it upside down, it's not the end of the world. This will be PVC bonded on there with your primer and your glue, as will this other piece, which is running out. So we're almost down over to the tray over here, where we're gonna actually have our water being delivered to the plants. With anything building out like this, it's always best to measure twice, cut once. For today's purposes, I'm just doing this really simple and quick, but if you do want a system that looks a little less janky, I would really recommend taking the time to measure out how far you need this PVC to go. I'm just gonna eyeball it today. So let's go ahead and put this piece in there. Alrighty, so now we have our hard PVC, comes up and over and going into the tray. We are almost to where we need to be. So we're gonna go ahead and cut this piece here. And this is gonna connect into that elbow back here. This will be bonded using your PVC glue and primer. We have one more elbow. This is going down into your tray. And now we're going to convert it to the Netafim tubing. The way that we're gonna do that is we are going to use this same piece that we used earlier. Again, smooth on the inside 1 inch. And this right here, 1 inch female thread. We need a little piece to connect it from the elbow into that. Just cut off a little couple inches here. That'll elbow right over. All of this will be hard bonded on there. And now we're converting the hard PVC into your Netafim tube. The next piece that we're gonna use here has that thread you see there. I believe that's a male thread to a 3/4 barb. You should be able to find these at any hardware store. It doesn't necessarily need to look exactly like this as far as the barb goes, but you do need that 1 inch thread here and that 3/4 barb. If your hardware store doesn't have a 1 inch thread here, you could do this as a 3/4 thread to a 3/4 barb as well. Really, it's whatever piece is available. This, I highly recommend putting a lot of plumber's tape around. And then after you do that, it's gonna go ahead and screw into your other piece there. So now that we've converted our hard PVC down to a barbed fitting, we can attach it to the Netafim 3/4 tubing. What you're gonna wanna do is run this line essentially right down the middle of your tray area. Today we're using a 4x4 tray as a really simple example of this. If you have a larger system or a larger setup, there's certainly different ways to do this. Let's go ahead and just make this area ready for some irrigation. So it looks like we need to go from about here to there. Perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this. Maybe a little bit extra just so I can put a valve on the end. When you get this tubing, it'll always have this bend to it. It'll sort of work its way out over time as the water flows into it rather. This piece right here is gonna connect directly into this barb. So we can do that by essentially just pushing it over and wiggling it. You want to get it as flush as possible with the head of your other piece. That's what happens when you don't hard bond it. If you make any mistakes cutting or you end up with something like this where it's really uneven and you'd like it to look a little more level, we purchased these little 1 inch couplers. Again, it's slip to slip or smooth to smooth if you want to call it that. And what you can do with this is you can fix any bad cuts you had or cuts that aren't necessarily up to the speed that you would like. So let's go ahead and just attach this. Toss on that coupler here. And then it looks like we need just a little piece, couple inches there. There you go. Now we got the height that we want there. Alrighty. I hope that you guys found this video helpful. We're gonna break this up into a 2-part video just to make it a little more bearable to watch at home. In the second part, we're gonna be going over the Netafim tubing and getting the different attachments from the tubing into the pots. Also, we're gonna be going over which pots you could use in different scenarios for which medium. And Jacob will be doing that next video.